Good evening and welcome to our December 1st Douglas County Board of County Commissioners business meeting. We want to welcome those of you who are with us here in the Douglas County Courthouse, as well as those of you joining us online. I just want to pass on a bit of information regarding how we'll run our hybrid meeting in person and on Zoom during this time of social distancing. Each action item will have an opportunity for public comment. If you'd like to make public comment on that item, we ask that you wait until the item on the agenda. The general public comment portion of our agenda is for items not on the agenda, but related to general county business. All public comments should be directed to the County Commission. For both opportunities, we will take public comment from folks who are with us in the courthouse first, and then online commenters. All public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. If you have public comment on an agenda item or under regular public comment, please use the raise your hand function if you're joining us on Zoom. Staff will call on you and unmute you. We ask that speakers give their name and address for the minutes. The county reserves the right to shut off the microphone and remove any speaker from the meeting if they are vulgar, rude, or inappropriate. If visual aids are used during the meeting, the presenter will share their screen with the call. Participants will not be able to view them without a computer, smartphone, or tablet, or if they are joining us in the courthouse. All participants will be entered into the meeting with their audio muted, meaning the commission and the public will not be able to hear you. Presenters will be unmuted when their agenda item comes up. We ask that all online presenters use good conference call etiquette and mute their line when not speaking and introduce themselves each time they speak. A recording of the meeting will be available on our website after the meeting. And we will get started with our consent agenda. Would either commissioner like to pull anything from the consent agenda? Would anyone joining us in the courthouse or online like to pull any item from the consent agenda? Okay.
This is Commissioner Reed. I move to approve today's consent agenda items 1.1 through 1.8.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We will move on to general public comment. If we have anyone in the courthouse with us today who has public comment on an item not on the agenda, please come forward. As you come forward, please be sure that you press the button on the microphone and see a green light before you start providing your public comment. Ma'am, you don't have to sign in, but if you just provide your name and address as you start your comments so that we have those for the minutes.
Hi, my name is Donna.
Please speak directly into the microphone.
My name is Donna Breckeisen Kanoki with the Kanoki Family Limited Partnership, 238 North Maple Street in Gardner, Kansas. The Breckeisens were early settlers in the southeast corner of Eudora in an area called Captain's Creek. My grandfather, William Breckeisen, a Civil War veteran, homesteaded land on the East Douglas County line. This land has been in our family for over 150 years. I was born and grew up on this land. In the 91 years I have been around, I have seen many changes. The biggest change was when electricity came to the rural areas in the late 40s. Wow, that was something when you could flip a switch and the whole room lit up like you were outdoors. The electricity needs grows more every day. Solar farms are needed as they use the sun to make electricity. A solar farm does not give off any hazardous material, does not give off any heat, and is very quiet and uses very little water. The panels are sealed so nothing can escape. Native grasses are planted under the panels to control erosion. Solar panels have a life expectancy of 35 years. A conditional use permit of 25 years with optional renewals should be allowed. A solar farm is self-contained and has to follow strict federal, state, and county requirements to protect adjoining properties. A solar farm will not affect the fresh air and sunshine of any of the area residents' properties. Our family, being good caretakers of land and partnering with NextEra, a respectable companies on building solar farms. This will allow us to preserve our land for future Breckheisen generations. Thank you for listening and consider taking the steps to meet the needs of renewable energy for now and in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have anyone else for general public comment? Thank you.
Is the button on? Okay. I'm Carlene Thompson. I live at 6020 Norston, Shawnee, Kansas, and I'm part of the Kanoki Family Trust. I'm here to ask that the Planning Commission and the commissioners work on setting fair and reasonable regulations for the solar farm that follows national guidelines. So far, it seems like things are getting a little more restrictive that we've seen compared to any other state in the United States. We would like to see by setting acreage that is panel coverage and not just straight acreage, because you have to have so much panel to generate the electricity that we're hoping to have, and that it would be the second in the area, as Baldwin has a city farm, and a lot of people aren't aware of that. So having adequate ability to expand would be for fair planning in the future. The second would be a conditional use permit in the form of between 25 and 40 years, as the panels will last from 30 to 40 years. And hopefully this farm generates a lot for the future of both Douglas and Johnson County. And many people have come forward to protest the ability to develop it, but foremost, they need to set the standards before that. And these people need to also talk to the solar developers about their concerns, rather than say it will do this, it will do that, because a lot of the things that are being presented have been falsely represented. The counties of Douglas and Johnson County need to see the potential to lead in creating these guidelines for the state, following national standards. NextEra has a history of working with other farmers in the area, especially with their wind powered. And I think that is something that should be checked out before that says that they're so terrible, because you've heard so many people say they're terrible, but they have worked with a lot of the community in developing a solar farm. So in conclusion, I'd like you to consider using national standards for the guidelines for developing a solar farm. Thank you. Press the button.
Thank you.
I have to put my mask away or I'll leave it up here. Hi, my name's Jane Kanoki, and I too am with the Breckheisens. I'm fifth generation Breckeisen, and my address is 23535 West 74th Street, Shawnee, Kansas. And you're seeing sitting over there, the fourth generation and the fifth generation. And my sister that just spoke took care of the seventh generation today. So what we would like is we would like to be able to preserve our land as a legacy for our family. And we feel that going with NextEra and looking at a way to use the land productively is a win for us. The soil is producing solar power is much more profitable than farming. The soil is not going to be overutilized. It's going to have a chance to be restored, and that especially with being planted in grasses and that. And it's a win because the county won't lose any taxes. We'll still be paying all of our property taxes. Now, a lot of people like to think that, well, you're not getting taxes, that it's the lost taxes, but that's something that can't be helped. That's a state decision on the 10-year abatement. It is also a win for the county because you'll begin to meet your energy goals that you have with the 5-state county that you've gone in partnership with on energy consumption reduction and that. Solar farms are a win for the neighbors because the wetlands are preserved, the streams are preserved, the wildlife is enhanced. Solar farms are quiet, no noise, very little traffic. Visually, they're not more than 12 feet high. And there's gentle rolling hills. There's appropriate screening there also. Now, we would like our land to produce more. I think every farmer would like their land to produce more than what they need. And so we too would like to have our land produce more than what we consume. And if this could be applied to solar panels, solar farm regs, we would like to say that let's not be the most restrictive county proposing regulations. 1,000-acre cup in 20 years that is non-renewable is a distinction I don't think Douglas County would like to have. I want to point out that Kansas City is putting in a proposed solar facility up by the, well, I call it an MCI because I used to work for the FAA, but it's KCI airport. And that has actually gotten publicity about being a very good selling point for this, the World Cup coming in, because they look at a whole variety of factors, not just can you afford it, can you have the hotels, the fields and that, but just what kind of atmosphere and attitude does a place have. So we'd sure appreciate it if you could look over the regs coming, and I know you're going to study them well, but to realize that it is a win for the city, a win for the homeowners, and a win for the county. Thank you.
I'm Robert Kanoki, and it was on the second Friday in 2018, January. We came home and there was a recording on the telephone from a guy named Bill Gorman, and said that wondered if we were interested in some land we had in Johnson and Douglas County about a solar farm. Said they were traded on New York Stock Exchange and so forth. Anyway, we investigated it and knew that quite a demand for clean energy, and thought it would just not be too bad. So we worked out an agreement with them, and everything looked like it was going good. We'd heard of troubles with some of the big windmills that they put up, but most people didn't object to a solar thing because they didn't no noise, and them don't make a noise, and no birds getting hurt and things like that. And I always thought they looked pretty good, the ones I'd seen riding in an airplane looking out. Anyway, we got got an agreement and so forth. It hadn't been for about a year, a little over a year. And the water district number 7 wanted to put in a line. It was going to have about 1.5 miles of it on our property. And of course, we'd already signed an easement, so there wasn't any way I could give them a deal on that. I went to NextEra and I knew they was going to take for about 50 foot, make them put their solar panel back about 50 foot. I doubted if they would do that, but after talking with the lawyers and everything, we finally got them to agree to do that. And the water line is in now, and it will cut back. It will cut back on our property on the amount of deal they put in, which anyway, now the people that this water benefits, they've all got signs up in their yard. You know, they don't think about that part of it. Anyway, I wanted to tell you about that and hope that you could work out. We've been to the Planning Commission and we need a 25-foot conditional use permit. The panels last for 30, 35 years and they're getting the deal. It's probably not going to be feasible unless we get a 25-year CUP. And we probably need more than 1,000 acres to make it feasible too in Douglas County. Probably ought to be at least 15, maybe 2,000. Well, thank you. Appreciate your time.
Do we have anyone else for general public comment? Do we have anyone online for general public comment?
We do, commissioners. We'll move Stephen Clark into the panel.
Stephen, go ahead and unmute and provide public comment.
All right, thank you very much. My name is Steve Clark. I live at 3422 Kensington Court in El Dorado Hills, California, though I grew up and lived in Johnson County for over 40 years. I'm a professional engineer with over 13 years of experience in utility scale solar energy. I'm connected to proposed solar farms in Douglas County through my in-laws who would like to lease their property for a solar farm. I'd like to use my short time this evening to address 2 topics. First, the comprehensive benefits of solar energy and solar farms. And secondly, the term for a conditional use permit. I previously addressed solar farm benefits in several written submittals to the Planning Commission. In each of these, I've substantiated the benefits of solar with quotes to reliable information sources. I've also dispelled some myths about solar projects and their impacts in my written submittals and provided reliable information sources. Among the benefits, and you've heard some of these from the other speakers tonight, solar farms actually generate electricity at a lower price than any conventional fossil or nuclear power plant. They're the least expensive for generating electricity today and comparable to wind. They use an inexhaustible renewable energy source. They produce no air emissions, wastewater, coal ash, or nuclear waste. They are very quiet. They have a low visual profile. They use very little water. Solar farms are built away from wetlands and streams. They meet all stormwater pollution regulations. Vegetation can be established underneath the panels and grow well there. Control of the vegetation growth can be accomplished without use of any herbicides to preserve soil health and groundwater quality. Visual impacts to neighboring residents can be minimized by applying reasonable setbacks and planting vegetation screens. Solar farms result in significant economic growth through hundreds of construction and O&M jobs, local subcontracts, and in sales and property tax. Solar farms result in significant economic improvement from current agricultural operations through electricity sales and land lease payments. Most importantly, solar farms don't emit climate warming carbon dioxide. When solar power is generated, coal-fired power generation can be reduced, eliminating large quantities of CO2. So despite these enormous benefits, it appears that Douglas County has drafted the current conditional use permit to have only a 20-year permit period. That's unreasonably short. It's lower than the 30 to 35-year design life of the solar equipment and panels. It isn't long enough to produce a return on the capital intensive farm and would turn away investors. Incredibly, I know of no other county in the country with this short term. Thank you.
We don't have anyone raising their hands online for additional public comment online.
Thank you. Then we will move on to our regular agenda. We'll start with item 3.1, American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA Letter of Interest Form. Sarah, what do you have for us?
Yes, Commissioners, Brooke Sauer, our finance manager, is here with a short presentation to walk us through the letter of intent. Brooke?
Thank you, Sarah, and good evening, Commissioners. Bear with me just one moment while I share my screen. Right. Okay, so back in September, we talked about the possibility of doing a letter of interest or a letter of intent process and solicit our community stakeholders for how they thought that they could spend the money on on their programs. So we'll go over briefly the letter of interest information. I'll ask the commission for some timelines. How long should we leave this process open? The data collection points, and then I'll open it up for any questions after that. With this letter of interest, it's going to be three-pronged. So the solicitations will be going out to previous subrecipients of CARES Act funding. So last year we had quite a few folks who were the recipient of that fund, and we'll go ahead and extend this process to them as well. In the 6 months or so since we've started this process, additional agencies have also reached out to county staff and expressed their interest in receiving a solicitation as well. So I've been compiling those requests and the people who have let me know that they're interested, and I'll be adding them to that list as well. Additionally, we have our internal departments. So at that time, we're going to run concurrently the internal process with that external process. So the same day that everybody from the outside receives that request, our internal departments will receive the same solicitation. In that emailed solicitation, external parties will be directed to a landing page. That landing page will list out the eligible items that would be covered with this fund, qualifying expenditure categories, and abbreviated guidance with respect to program or project priorities. Internal departments will be asked to complete a paper form, and I'll just have to kind of manually add those in after the fact. The reason why I didn't want them to do the online process is because there are questions that I'm asking our external folks that I already know about us. So when we talk about launching the form and opening it up for folks to go ahead and submit their letters of interest, and depending on any feedback that you guys might have for me tonight about what we can add or what we shouldn't have, the letter of interest form can be launched as early as mid-December. The deadline information will be added to that landing page once the dates are finalized, so everyone will have a very clear idea of when they'll need to get their submissions in. And then staff would recommend that the form be publicly available for a period of no less than 1 month. And with that being said too, with consideration for the holiday, a lot of people are getting together this year because they didn't last year. So maybe 45 days, but really no less than 1 month. For the data collection, so this is what we're really after here is how folks are thinking about this funding. So once the data collection period closes, as you guys will give me direction tonight, staff will extract the form answers, compile the data into standardized format. So for me, what this means is that hopefully I can get this pared down to a 1-page document per request. We may get 200 requests. So that means 200 pages to go through, to look through that. So, I've really given some limits to the form. You only have a certain number of characters when you're defining your project or your program in an attempt to make this somewhat short. The primary data for the program analysis is currently around the expenditure categories and subcategories. So this is going to be public health or premium pay or those main categories, and then the subcategories get a little bit more in depth. The second data for the program analysis would be project sustainability once funds have been exhausted. External parties will be subject to additional questions, and I kind of already went over that. That's really all I have right now. This is in a test environment. It's not in a production environment yet, but we do have the landing page in an HTML format, as well as the, survey, the form survey, where it asks all the questions. If commission would like, I can bring it up now, or I can send you guys the link if you'd like, so that you can check it out if you want. But I'd like to stand for any questions that you have or any suggestions about what we're collecting on the form.
And while the commissioners are thinking about their questions, just a couple of comments. I think it's and Brooke, you could, yep, thanks. This process is, and I think what we probably didn't really talk through is then our intent after this would be, we bring back information related to these letters of interest, and then the commissioners from that could really use that to form the request for proposals. So an RFP. So really, what is the type of projects that the commission is looking to fund with the ARPA funds based off of the information you receive on the letters of intent. To me, this stage is less about specifically knowing all the details about a particular project to determine, yes, I am extremely interested in pursuing this particular project. I have these 10 questions I want to know the answers to. What is more important, or what are the projects that we're not as interested in funding? How can we create, in essence, sort of narrow the ball field? Because as Brooke has pointed out, there are so many categories here of what is eligible, but the commission has discretion in what are its priorities and how these funds are spent. So I think this is a crucial process for the commissioners to really begin to think about what are the particular projects they want to see, and really do some of this work up front, so that folks know, like, hey, if I'm not going to invest a whole lot of time putting in an RFP for a proposal and go through that process, which will have more substantial vetting, if this is not the kind of thing the commission is supportive of funding.
This is Commissioner Portillo. Thank you so much for the presentation, Brooke, and all of the thought that you've put in to this form. And thank you for that additional background, Sarah. I have a question about some of the questions that are listed. So you have a very specific word limit for the project summary and then additional questions. I'm assuming that not all of these questions are expected to be answered in the summary. So these are there's a summary section and then additional. Some of these present as kind of yes, no questions. Okay, so they all are meant to just be yes, no with a pull down. I just wanted to make sure we weren't creating space for a lot more information.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Thanks, Commissioner Portillo. This is Commissioner Reed here. Similarly, I was curious about the expenditure category and expenditure subcategory. Are those going to be like drop-down menu options where people will be selecting, and which then I know later in the form, I think you give a link for further resources about how to read more on the federal government's website?
Yeah, and it was really hard to capture that in a table without releasing the website so you guys could just go and look. But once the end user selects the expenditure category, then they're limited to only the subcategories within that main category, and then they can select multiple. So if, the health department wants to do contact tracing, this is just an example, contact tracing, and then some other health related items, they would be able to select 3 or 4 within that category.
Okay, great, thank you.
Yes.
And I would personally love to see that test page if that's I would like to click through it, and I think it would
Absolutely.
be useful. The other I wanted to ask, I highlighted the question, does your agency have adequate and qualified staff to comply with the terms of the sub-grant award? And I wonder, is that something in your experience with all, the folks that we're gonna send this out to and solicit will be familiar? Is that also envisioned as a yes, no question? I'm trying to anticipate the amount and volume of follow-up questions you might be fielding.
Yeah, and I do fully expect those. So, as the primary recipient of the funding, we have to monitor any subrecipient of the fund, and there's a risk assessment tool that we use to kind of measure, their internal controls and their ability to make sure that they can segregate these funds in a manner that is consistent with what the Office of Budget Management require for us. And so it's just kind of a little bit of a precursor to, if we do a full-blown RFP process, these are the kinds of things that we're going to be asking to make sure that, if you're awarded, if you're awarded $180,000, that you can manage that funding, and it's not just on an Excel spreadsheet. And maybe it is, but that would just be something that I would want to make sure and look at from a monitoring perspective. Does that answer your question? Okay.
Brooke, thanks for all your work on this. And I'm going to guess I know the answer to this question, but I think we had some public communication about individuals. Everything outlined here is for agencies. And when we did CARES Act money, that seems like a long time ago now. Can you talk a little bit why you decided to only do agencies and not do individuals?
Honestly, I didn't even think about it. So if that is something that the commission would like to do and would like to open it up to, I would consider that if we were to open it to individuals, they would be direct recipients of the fund. It is allowed per the Treasury guidance. We can do that. So again, if that is something that commission would like to do, we could definitely do that. It would be administratively, if an agency were to take that on and they were then making the direct, the direct assistance to that individual, there would be more internal control in place there. But yeah, if the commission wants, I'd be happy to explore it.
So I'll start by saying I would rather we work with agencies on this, and that if individuals would like to apply, they should be a collection of individuals as an agency that's applying, just because I think people don't quite understand the level of data collection that they're going to need to take, reporting collection that needs to happen, and making sure those agencies have that in place. We have a lot of expectations around these dollars, and we want to make sure that it's not just one person trying to make these, and the number of contacts you would have to make to make sure all of those awards would be monitored appropriately. That's just my opinion, commissioners.
Yes, and not only that, but from a regulatory standpoint, there's a lot more rules involved with the ARPA money than was the CARES Act money. So there's a lot more of the Code of Federal Regulations that applies that did not apply with the CARES Act money last year.
If I can add on to that, yeah, I would say the county is responsible for these funds from a federal compliance standpoint. Our audit, our single audit is all dependent upon our excellent administration of these funds. Commissioners know how seriously I take our clean audits and our work in this space with our very limited staff to manage very extensive federal awards. So we would err on the side of caution, and we're going to err on the side of being conservative in terms of being able to know that we can get the documentation we need so that the county is secure and so that the county has not overextended itself in relationship to subrecipients. Ultimately, we are responsible for how these funds are spent.
No additional questions, actually.
We will open this up for public comment. Do we have any folks in the courthouse for public comment on this item?
Okay, the green button, I'm colorblind, but that's going to be the button here, which is good. I'm Peter Wren. I'm a social entrepreneur, and I live at 888 New Hampshire, apartment 415 in Lawrence. I'm here to talk a little bit about the allowable use of funds. I'm kind of old and I get a little confused. And when I'm looking at the federal requirements and I look at what your staff has produced, I don't know if startups and would-be entrepreneurs are covered by this. I can see where there may be some startups that are in the impacted industry, but there may be some startups and some would-be entrepreneurs that don't fit in that tight definition. So I would be here to say, hey, if I can be assured that startups can be covered, then I don't have an issue. But if I can't, then I'm going to urge you to cover startups and cover would-be entrepreneurs. Companies that are newer than 5 years old generate more net jobs than anybody else. And so I would really like to encourage you to look at that category and say, if we've got people that have been impacted by COVID, let's see if we can get them some help. Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we will bring this back to commissioners for discussion. I do just want to say I really appreciate this process of making sure that our community partners aren't putting together full proposals before we have a chance to kind of look at the broad array of proposals so that we might consolidate, ask some folks to work together and collaborate, and have a chance to say these are things that we're not interested in. I also just want to echo Commissioner Kelly's comments about agencies and organizations, given, again, what Sarah said, our clean audits are very important to me as well, and we are responsible for these funds. And so I think that making sure that these funds are going to agencies and organizations that can handle them, that does not preclude startups. I think that that does mean that if there are organizations that are at the point where they can manage this funding, they are very welcome to apply. And there are community partners that are focused on issues of economic development that may find some folks who could benefit from this as well. I hear what you were saying, Commissioner Reed, about wanting to see the website. I also want to make sure that we're moving forward. So I don't know how we balance kind of getting this up so that people have a chance to get their proposals in while also giving us a chance to take a look if we'd like to.
I would say, and Brooke's coming up here too, I think if there are no changes to the formatting of it, I think we could still be ready for a mid-December release, and trying to get the link to commissioners in advance of that would not slow us down.
Mm-mm.
I appreciate that. Yeah, and I would just clarify, there's no formatting issues that I see your edits that I have suggested. I'm a curious person and I would like to click through it, and that might generate a tiny edit or something, but mostly I'm just curious. So and while speaking, I would concur that I think it's appropriate that agencies is who we are soliciting from, and that can be broadly defined within the parameters necessary. And I also just want to really encourage the spirit of collaboration. To me, this piece of the process that we're layering in, for me, I think that that's a way to really frame that up, and that creativity begets creativity, and that for us to see a number of people's initial big ideas and kind of big visions will really help guide our conversation and spark other ideas. And then will give us a way to really offer meaningful guidance to folks for fine tuning that, and maybe figuring out amongst each other in the collaborations that already exist throughout this community, how some of those projects look similarly and might work well as a larger or collective proposal. So I'm really excited about this. And I appreciate all the efforts to make it as concise as possible, because I don't want this to be a whole bunch of labor for folks up front. I think the goal is to give us some guidance and to sort of help start generating those creative ideas. So thanks for helping scale it down. I will appreciate the 1-page limit if we can achieve that. So thanks, Brooke.
Absolutely.
Along that line, when we say collaboration, I think that's another really important part of this process, and it goes to the conversation about individual agencies. One of the things I think we were most successful about with the CARES Act funding was, we saw like several restaurants looking for funds. We were able then to say, Lawrence Restaurant Association, would you like to manage a grant process for restaurant support? Peasley Technical College, would you want to, manage this process for a variety of folks? So I think that's another thing out of this process, is that we could see alignment, and then we could look to organizations to say, would you be willing to host would you put in an application that would meet the needs of several of these folks? Because the level of subrecipient work here is tremendous. We did not go into the whole history here. I believe, and Brooke can correct me when I'm wrong, when we did this the first time with the CARES Act, we had the most subrecipients of any county in Kansas by leaps and bounds. Most communities are not being as wide open with these processes and these funds. I can tell you many of them have a lot more staff than us to manage this process. So I think it's important when we say collaborate, talk to your friends and neighbors, talk to others in the community that have several shared interests.
Mm-hmm.
Can you work together and request something that is then used to support others in the community? Are you willing to take that? Is that organization? We worked with Explore Lawrence. We worked with the Lawrence Restaurant Association. We worked with Downtown Lawrence.
Mm-hmm.
We worked with multiple folks in that group. The Housing Stabilization Collaborative to fund individual outreach to individuals, but they played an intermediary role and helped us manage that piece. So I think sometimes when we say collaboration, that's what we mean, is it'd be great to have proposals like that on behalf of other needs in the community.
Mm-hmm.
You did mention a timeline and
Oh,
when.
no, yeah, and I think that would be good to hammer out. So if we go live December 15th, I was thinking we could leave the application open with consideration for the holiday through the end of January. So about 45 days. That gives everybody plenty of time to go enjoy family and not have to worry about getting this done by January 15th. So if commission is good with that timeline, I think that we can do a formal launch of the form by December 15th.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Excellent.
Agreed.
Do we need any motion on this item?
We don't need formal action on this item. Commissioners, I believe we have consensus to, did you give him a motion?
I did, but it was just to authorize staff to launch form.
Okay.
So
I think if you want to go ahead and make a motion, that's great, but to just make sure we're all on the same page then.
First, Brooke, are there any unanswered questions? Thanks for remembering the timeline, Commissioner Kelly.
thank you.
Any other?
No, Commissioner Reed.
Okay. Well, then I move to approve going forward with the launch page and form and the deadline of December 15th to January 31st.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Brooke.
Thank you.
We will move on to item 3.2, Douglas County Animal Control Code update.
Good evening, Commissioners. Jill Joliker here to just briefly set up what we're hopeful will be a just kind of a closing conversation to what we started earlier this year in a presentation to the County Commission regarding revisions to the Animal Control Code. I kind of outlined the key highlight. I did outline the key highlights, highlighted changes of the that will be reflected in the updates that are before you today to approve. Outreach was performed to the community over the course of several weeks to communicate those changes and get a sense of whether there were any significant concerns or constraints or barriers to moving forward with those proposed changes. None were received. However, revisions were made between some changes, small tweaks were made to the document between the last time you saw it. And again, those highlights are noted in the cover memo that was provided to you today. But we do have Katie Barnett and Shannon Wells here today to answer any questions or concerns you have and probably address some of the questions that came from a communication that was received by Robin related to the proposed changes and whether or not we have some good responses to those. I might let Katie and Shannon kick things off with that regard.
Sure. Katie Barnett and with the Lawrence Humane Society. We did receive 3 very specific questions. The first one was, shall we add pigs, llamas, alpacas to the definition of livestock? The impact that has is where livestock is referred to in the draft is under dangerous animals. And what that means is if a dog attacks an alpaca, it's treated the same as if a dog attacks a donkey. We do not oppose that addition. I don't know if we need a broader definition of livestock. I do worry when we just have it broad, but I don't mind adding those animals. I can't think of any other type of livestock animal that we would also need to add, but we are not opposed to that. The second question was, just gonna check it real quick. So I'm answering these questions.
Livestock guardian dogs that may be kept with livestock on property
Thank
away
you.
from the owner's home.
So this is a pretty significant change that was made at the request and within discussions with planning and zoning, specifically with Tanya and Ben. They have encountered many properties and parcels that have dogs that are just there with no home, no homeowner, no person present to manage whether that dog is on or off the property at any time, which endangers public safety. Additionally, when you have those properties, it also can endanger the humane treatment of the animal, of course, because there's no one there to see if the animal is harmed by another animal or if it is in need of water, food, etc. It's obviously, depending on how the animal is kept, it could be receiving adequate exercise or not. Of course, that's all under the Kansas state statute. We don't regulate that in the county. But this change in specifically whether or not these changes would affect livestock guardian dogs, yes, they would. You could not have a dog guarding a pasture of cattle unattended with no person, home, property attached to that parcel. You can, of course, have your dog guarding your cattle or roosters so long as there's a dwelling attached to that parcel. So again, that change came from codes. The third question was about the definition of dangerous dog confinement in structures. All structures, essentially, if a dog was deemed dangerous, they are to be kept in a secure location. Secure location can, of course, include inside a home or inside a secure barn or inside a secure kennel with a dog house or something within that kennel. If there's confusion as to what that means, essentially the outdoor dog run cannot be the primary place this dangerous dog is kept. So that's the question. I disagree with the assumption that that doesn't jive with how rural dogs are kept. I think that we are just trying to meet a minimum standard of care and also ensuring that there's not just one barrier between a dangerous dog, a dog that has exhibited behavior and been declared by a hearing officer to be dangerous, and the general public and access to other properties.
Commissioners, I wanted to share that we do have Tanya and Ben from Zoning and Codes on the Zoom as well, if there's questions that you want to direct to them on any of this. And thanks for going through those, Katie, and she appreciate it.
We will open this up for questions from commissioners. Do we have questions? Okay, we will open this up for public comment. Do we have anyone here for public comment?
Good afternoon. My name is Roger Williams. I live at 224 Summer Tree Lane. And I'm kind of here to speak on behalf of this for bicyclists, believe it or not. I'd like to thank the Lawrence Humane Society for taking the time to review and recommend these included updates. I took the time to look at the old code and then how the updates will look, and really think it's a nice way for pet owners to be able to see what's what with definitions and other things. Okay, so as a longtime resident and cyclist, I've noticed that in the past, more people in cyclists, there's been more people in cyclist interactions with dogs out on the rural roads. I think maybe the commissioners are aware that Lawrence, Kansas is a hub for gravel cycling here. And today, actually, there was a lot of action on Facebook. A couple of feeds that I do. I moderate Lawrence, Kansas cycling on Facebook, and this actually got a lot of questions today about this. So that's why I felt the need to come and speak on it. And with those interactions, a lot of times they end badly, typically with dogs running loose and free out in the county, either crashing cyclists or biting cyclists. And then with the end of that, there's no repercussions for pet owners. And then I've had friends who have been either bitten really bad or crashed to the point of being unconscious and had to be taken to the hospital. And they had they basically, their insurance and everything had to pay for it, and the pet owner should have been responsible, and they weren't held responsible. So with those interactions, we as cyclists would like to see, and these county codes look really good about trying to make pet owners more responsible, even out in the county. We have nothing against dogs running loose and doing whatever they do, but if they cause a problem, then there need to be repercussions that can be enforced. And I think that with the way this is worded, that would help a lot. So I recommend that these updates be accepted from the Humane Society, and the code be written as such as what was put out on the agenda report today. And I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Do we have anyone online for public comment?
Yes, we do, commissioners. The first person I'm going to be moving over is Julie Gasper. Julie, you can go ahead and unmute and provide public comment.
There we go.
We can hear you, Julie. Go ahead.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, my name is Julie Gasper. I live at 2203 Greenbrier Drive. As I'm really coming to talk again as a cyclist in the county and mirror the comments that were just previously made. As a local cyclist, I have spent a lot of time out on our gravel roads and can't even tell you the number of times that I have been chased and terrorized by dogs. It has actually stopped me from getting out to enjoy our beautiful county. I've been one of the lucky ones. I have not been bitten, but I've had a number of close calls. So I just wanted to voice that I believe that there are several parts of this that really sound very good from an enforcement standpoint. 2402 and 2404 in terms of both the dogs at large and dogs that, cause fear to people in the public right of way. I'm very excited to see things being done to try to mitigate that and try to enforce when that does happen. I just wanted to voice my one concern is that with this being transferred over to the Humane Society, whether they have the bandwidth for enforcement, whether they are going to be able to chase down these complaints and effectively handle them. Essentially, if they are going to be scary enough, as when a sheriff would come to your front door. So I just wanted to make sure that that's something we think about, that as things do happen and people do call in complaints, that mechanism for, making sure that enforcement does happen, that there is enough bandwidth for that follow-up to occur. But otherwise, I believe that this really is a good step forward, and I'm very excited to see things being done so that those of us who do love getting out there can do so with a little less fear behind us.
Thanks, Julie. The next person I'm going to be moving over into the panel is Shannon O'Connor. Shannon, go ahead and unmute and provide public comment.
All right, good evening. My name is Shannon O'Connor. I live at 5505 Plymouth Drive in Lawrence. And I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but unless the commissioners have had the opportunity to be chased by an angry sounding, snarling, running dog, or multiple dogs in the middle of a public paved road in the county, then you're really missing out on a key threat that is faced by cyclists. In my case and the case of my husband and family, we are road cyclists. The two other speakers are more gravel. But nonetheless, this experience that I have had, my husband has had, my cycling friends have had, underscores why I support your effort to create and craft a more cogent, enforceable set of policies regarding vicious animals in Douglas County. On September 25th, just a couple of months ago, my husband and I were with 3 other experienced cyclists. We were on a paved road coming out of Clinton Parkway, Clinton Lake, in the middle of our 30-mile ride. And we were set upon by a group of dogs. We We also had the unfortunate experience to listen to the dog's human encourage the dogs to continue chasing us and to continue attacking at us. Thankfully, at that time, none of us were hurt, but the threat is real. And when you're faced with that situation, it is a heart-stopping experience. It's one that takes all of your attention and focus. And for cyclists in particular, those of us on the road, we are truly caught between a rock and a hard place because we have a pack of dogs in the middle of the road, a public space, threatening us, or we have to assume that they intend to hurt us. And on the other side, we have traffic, cars. And it's just us, our bikes, and our helmets. And there's not a lot to be done there. And so any effort by the commission to take action and support a cogent, enforceable set of policies that they can help make the county safer for everyone is one that I support. And I thank you for taking the time to work with the Douglas County Sheriff's Office, ideally, and the Humane Society. In our case, we did call Douglas County Sheriff's. They sent a deputy. We have no idea what the outcome of that conversation was, but we left the conversation understanding that very little could be done in actuality. So any effort that you can make to make this situation more tenable and safe for the community is very much appreciated. Thank you.
Do we have anyone else for a public comment?
Does not appear we do.
Okay, then we will bring this back for discussion. I really appreciate you all addressing the comments that were emailed to us. And I do just want to echo what a number of our public commenters have said, that this update looks fantastic. I actually really like the shifting this from the sheriff's office to the Humane Society and moving it to an administrative hearing, because I think it actually does allow for more responsiveness, not having to go through the district court. Ultimately, this is a way that we are kind of reforming the criminal justice system and moving things away from criminal to administrative hearings, where I think that they can be addressed more readily. And so that hopefully will create a safer environment for cyclists long-term as well. But I just want to say thank you for all of the work that I know went into these.
Commissioners, I did one of the comments, I believe, was about resources available to the Humane Society to expand the enforcement piece of this. And I just a note to the public listening, that the county commission did approve an additional $113,559 in the 2022 budget to support the implementation of this new code enforcement function. So I just want to make sure that the work is underway, and that's the next step of developing that scope of work and operationalizing all of this. And then I'll just also share that in a implementation call that we had with Humane Society and Sheriff's Office and Planning and Zoning last week or the week before, there was one of the to-do items for follow-up was a conversation with Sheriff's Dispatch about how these calls are assigned and making sure that the appropriate responses is happening.
This Commissioner Reed. Okay, so I think I do have a question that I guess I just want to discuss further. Thanks very much for addressing those questions that we received this afternoon right off the top. But I wanted to talk about the definitions and the livestock thing a little bit more, because I just went back and skimmed through all the places where you define what an equine animal is and what livestock is and what fowl is. And I'm those are the pigs, llamas, and alpacas are absolutely things I have visited at farms in this county. So I think leaving them out of definitions, that seems, I guess I'm just curious to have more discussion about it. I don't know what the implications of it are, but there's an extensive list of other animals, but those are relatively common and they're not defined as in any particular way. So if there were any calls related to those animals, I'm curious what parts of the code would govern that, if that question makes sense, Katie.
Yes, so again, we are certainly not opposed to adding them into this definition. I don't know procedurally what would that would look like. We would certainly welcome those additions. Again, if you scan livestock, you'll see that it primarily comes up, or I think it only comes up as a dog damaging or injuring a livestock animal. And that being a nuisance animal, unless it caused death to the animal, which would mean it's a dangerous animal. And so if a dog severely injured or killed a llama, then it would be treated as if it killed a horse or another dog, sheep, goats, etc. Does that answer your question? If we leave them out, a couple dangerous dogs could be at large someday and go on someone's farm and take down their llama, take down their alpaca, and there would really be nothing but a civil remedy for the alpaca or llama owner. And those dogs could be free to roam, but for them being at large. Does that help?
Yeah, so I think this is just adding to the definition of livestock.
That's
Because right
correct.
now it's very specific to cattle, sheep, or goats. So just saying cattle, sheep, goats, llamas, alpacas. And there was a third,
Pigs was the other one.
pigs.
Pigs.
I'm interested if commissioners have any further comments or opinion about that.
I'm good amending the
I'm fine making
definition.
that addition.
And I think we can still, procedurally, we can just make a motion to amend the definition of livestock within the code and still vote to adopt the code today. So it will not delay.
Yes, I agree, commissioners. I think you could do that. What we would do then is prepare a revised resolution based off that instruction, if that was how the motion went tonight, Katie. And then the commissioners could sign it at a later date. And that would be reflective of the new code if they want to add that to the definition.
Okay.
Do we have any additional discussion?
Thank you, commissioners, very much for your attention to this issue. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to approve revisions to the County Code of Douglas County, Chapter 2, Animal Control through County Resolution 2150, adding pigs, llamas, and alpacas to the livestock definition.
Second.
All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. We will move on to appointments. I don't think we have any appointments for this evening. Do we, Sarah?
I don't believe we do.
Okay, we will move on to miscellaneous. What do you have for us, Sarah?
Commissioners, my weekly memo is attached, just some updates in terms of timing. We've got on December 9th, so coming up next week, we're going to have a community listening session on a move to 3 to 5 commissioners. And so want to make sure folks know that that's coming up. And I put a note in there as speaking of things put into the 2022 budget. One of the additional new additions for the 2022 budget was a planner position for planning, zoning, and codes. They had begun recruitment and we're lucky to find somebody that could start yet this calendar year. They'll start December 15th. Since it's included in the budget, I just want to make commissioners aware that we're just going to start that position just a tiny bit early. And so that we've got full disclosure on that. And that's all I really have, commissioners. Unless there's any questions for me.
Does anyone else have any other miscellaneous?
I have just one thing. It's actually a question for Jill, if she can help me out. So this Friday, the 3rd, from I believe 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. is the Douglas County Youth Entrepreneurship Challenge, and it's virtual, correct, Jill?
It is.
That, can you mention where folks can go watch that if they're interested, or where the results of that will be?
The results will be shared. We'll have the, see, I don't think I have that posted, but we can get the details of where the Zoom link is posted on the county's website. But the results will be shared approximately, I think we slated around between 11 and 11:30 online at the end of it. But we have invited, we plan to have the winners come to next week's county commission meeting and be presented with their award checks and be recognized. We weren't able to do that last year. We did it virtual, but we never did any kind of a recognition ceremony in person because of how wonky last year was. I think knowing what we know now, we probably could have done this year's event in person, but when we started planning months ago, we didn't know what to think. But we will have the award winners here next week. That is our hope, if they're available, and we can celebrate them and recognize them and hear more about their winning business plans next week. But yes, we will get the information about how to participate live listed on our website.
Cool. Thank you, Jill. You
Yeah.
read my mind. I was hoping we had an opportunity to celebrate them here. So thanks.
Yeah.
We have nothing else. We're adjourned. Thank you.